Hi everybody, this is Dino Chris from Prehistoric Facts, and this is the next episode. We got two animals to talk about today, and they are Phorusrachos and Gigantopithecus. Start off with Phorusrachos. Phorusrachos is Greek or Latin meaning for branch holder. Fossils found in South America, Middle Miocene, 12 million years ago. About 8 feet tall, approximately 300 pounds, and it's a carnivorous bird. And basically, this is what this animal is. It's a gigantic bird. Now, this is a bird that will not fly, so this is actually a heavyweight bird. So it's kind of like what ostriches are, emus, and cassowaries are. They're very heavy-set birds, and they don't have that capability to fly. And the thing about these animals is that they're very carnivorous, and their nickname for these kinds of carnivorous birds are called terror birds, and it's a cool nickname for these kinds of animals because it kind of shows kind of what they are based on what their skeleton looks like. Large head with a hook-like beak, very small wings, and pretty much very powerful legs, and with sharp talons on their feet. And so these animals would have probably been very fast. They would have probably reached speeds of over 30 miles per hour, probably pretty close to an ostrich. And of course, being from South America, it would have actually been able to take care, probably would have hunted some of the megafauna that was actually in South America at that time. Now, around 12 million years ago, what we'll actually see is pretty much a transition that'll be taking place. And basically, the Isthmus of Panama is actually starting to form and basically starting to actually connect to South America, which is basically the transition of North America and South America. And that's when North American animals were pretty much migrating towards South America, and some of the South American animals were actually migrating towards North America. But even though but basically what would happen is that the North American animals would thrive a lot better than the megafauna that is actually going to be moving up towards North America. It's because the South American animals just couldn't adapt to the changes in the environment that they actually would be living in, especially with the carnivores that would be around, like the saber-toothed cats, the giant bears, and the wolves, those kinds of predators. But in this case of Phorusrachos, it stayed in South America. Its other relatives migrated towards North America a little bit later after it got extinct. So that was pretty much how that goes. Now, probably what Phorusrachos would have actually taken care of was it would have probably taken care of some of the smaller animals, probably actually have killed some small animals, probably, but these animals would actually be very weird compared to the mammals that we actually know today. But these mammals would actually be marsupials, basically, so they would have been weird looking, not considerably like the megafauna that was actually in Australia, where you have the giant wombats, the giant kangaroos, and the marsupial lion, those types of things. These would have been herbivorous animals, and pretty much kind of not really very good looking, you would actually say. And pretty much Phorusrachos, how it hunts is pretty much it uses its speed to catch its prey, but probably it did use its talons to grab its prey, to possibly tackle it, but also probably used its large head to actually tip the prey down, and then pretty much use its talons to hold the prey down, and then use the hook from its beak, the little sharp hook at the end of its beak, to actually jab the prey pretty much right in the neck or in the head. And if any of you actually saw kind of sort of like Monsters Resurrected, there was a episode about terror birds, and pretty much they were mostly talking about Titanis walrus, but even though it would actually say that terror birds probably had the capability of actually crushing the skull of its prey, probably like ancient horses, probably some of the marsupials that actually was actually hunting around. But Phorusrachos is not the largest of its family. It's not the largest terror bird. That would actually belong to Kalinkin. And so Kalinkin was actually a little bit earlier than Phorusrachos, but also Phorusrachos was actually presented in Walking with Prehistoric Beasts in the episode of Sabretooth, which is the second to last episode of the series. And they actually depicted Phorusrachos as a top predator, but then when the saber-toothed cats came in, the saber-toothed cats became the top predators, and the terror birds were pretty much almost on their way out from South America, pretty much almost nearly to become extinct. And a lot of theories actually say that the birds couldn't compete with the mammals. Like the mammals had a bigger brain and probably had the better capabilities of hunting, and also probably with group hunting as well, probably actually took away the abilities of what Phorusrachos or the terror birds would have actually able to do, because terror birds were pretty much solo hunters, pretty much lone hunters, so they would have actually taken care of their own food. They would have taken care of their own prey pretty easily on their own. But their behaviors would have probably been almost like say, if you took birds of prey of today, like either hawks or owls, falcons, eagles, and then pretty much put that brain into an ostrich and actually have the head of an eagle be twice the size, and then pretty much give the ostrich a little bit more weight, and then pretty much give them stronger legs, and then you got yourself a terror bird. And pretty much the extinction of Phorusrachos would have actually have been just pretty much climate change, and also newer predators were coming in, especially the saber-toothed cats, and also the pretty big wolves that actually came into South America as well. And saber-toothed cats would have been the top predators, but also some of the bears would actually have gotten into South America as well. See, the placental mammals, basically mammals that actually give birth live birth, basically, would have actually taken care of them, would have actually outcompeted the marsupials. And that's pretty much what's kind of happening in Australia today, is basically the marsupials can't compete with the placental mammals very well, and that's pretty much how that's kind of happening. But even though marsupials do tend to thrive pretty quickly, but then they actually disappear very quickly as well. So they're not the, and also marsupials are not the brightest of the mammals as well, because they don't really have a great big brain compared to the placental mammals. But even though they actually do thrive for a good period of time, but with the terror birds, they only lasted until pretty much 5 million years ago, and then that's pretty much just because the mammals totally outcompeted them, and also they were running out of prey, and their prey was pretty much disappearing as well. So especially with the marsupials that it hunted most of the time, probably couldn't actually compete very good. Probably couldn't actually catch those it could catch horses, but probably other animals as well it couldn't actually try to catch very quickly. And also pretty much the kills would have been so loud that saber-toothed cats and wolves would have actually just came in and actually just took away the terror bird's food and all that sorts of stuff. But the terror bird, the Phorusrachos, is still a really cool animal in a way, and I think it's pretty much like one of my terror birds are pretty much one of my favorite carnivorous animals that have actually lived on Earth. And I think they're actually pretty cool. And they probably actually were almost descendants of tyrannosaurs, but even though they were pretty much raptorial dinosaurs would have been their closest relatives. And we'll actually move on to Gigantopithecus. And Gigantopithecus is a large ape, basically a large ape. And there's different kinds of Gigantopithecus, but even though we'll actually talk about the largest one would be Gigantopithecus blacki, or blackie. It actually would have stood nearly 10 feet tall, and would have weighed nearly a ton. And so this is a pretty big ape. And so I'm not really that great with apes, but even though I'll give it a shot right here. Gigantopithecus their fossils are found in Southeast Asia, and their habitat was pretty much heavily forested, and they were probably almost the same color as orangutans. And I think that's pretty much what their living relatives are today. The orangutans were pretty much the descendant of Gigantopithecus. And so Gigantopithecus would have been very slow. Their legs would have actually been very small, and their arms would have been really, really long. So pretty much it would have actually been walking on its knuckles most of the time. Now, there are some odd theories that say like Gigantopithecus might have survived longer than what actually became extinct, and it probably kind of actually ultimately became like the Yeti, Sasquatch, or Bigfoot. But I disagree with that, because you see, there's no evidence that is directly linked to that, and we don't really have any like fossil evidence of like big ape men living around aside humans during that kind of time, and I don't really see any evidence to support that Bigfoot or Sasquatch or the Yeti would have actually been in existence today, because there's so limited evidence, and also you really don't have a good video or photograph of the animal, you know. But anyway, back to Gigantopithecus. And Gigantopithecus, being an ape, a gigantic ape, would have been able to eat fibrous plants. Basically, it would have actually eaten fruits. It would have eaten some leaves, but also it could actually eat bamboo, because there's fossil evidence to support this in that kind of case. But there's very limited fossils of Gigantopithecus, because most of the Gigantopithecus fossils that I've heard are pretty much teeth and some mandible pieces. The mandible is basically your lower jaw, and pretty much we don't really have a really good estimate of its size, because we actually have to guess. Basically, we have to guess its size, and also we actually kind of have to guess what the skull might have looked like. And so pretty much we have to look at orangutans to actually figure out like what the skull of Gigantopithecus probably looked like. So it would have been almost 2 to 3 times the size of an orangutan's, but pretty much double the size of an orangutan's. It probably did live alongside human relatives, so pretty much almost like Neanderthal, like people, basically. But Neanderthals didn't get very far to Southeast Asia. They were pretty much known in Europe and also in Russia. So I would actually think like what kind of people would have actually been living with Gigantopithecus. So I'm pretty sure Gigantopithecus would have been a very gentle animal, but I'm pretty sure if you actually provoke it, it would have actually been very aggressive, and pretty much it had the strength to actually pretty much pound any carnivore down, especially with like if it did use tools, it probably would have used rocks to actually defend itself. But even though its size would have actually have been a really good defense as well, because you see, if there's predators of Gigantopithecus, and pretty much, I'm pretty sure it would have been the large cats. It would have been pretty much big cats. Would have actually been the predators of Gigantopithecus, and they would have been pretty cautious with adult Gigantopithecus, especially males. Males would have actually been really aggressive. And the females would have actually been not as aggressive, but even though they can probably take care of themselves, is pretty good. Now, with Gigantopithecus, their populations would have been very small. Because you see, if an ape gets that size, nearly 10 feet tall, then it would actually not have a very big population. So pretty much, you're living in a very small group. And I'm pretty sure they would have probably lived in pairs, or maybe lived with, maybe they're like 3 or 4 members of a group, but they would have probably not have been very big at all. So they would have actually covered very small spaces, especially with their large size. They would have not have dealt with they would not have dealt with handling basically really large territories. But I mean, I'm pretty sure they could, but it's just that with that kind of size, you need to actually limit. You need to limit how big you can get. You need to limit how big your group can get. But also, these animals would have been very intelligent. They would have probably been intelligent enough to actually use tools if possible. But of course, extinction of Gigantopithecus, it would have pretty much been basically that the environment totally changed, and pretty much it couldn't adapt to the new changes, and then basically humans were almost ready to come in and pretty much kind of actually overtake their territory. So pretty much humans being an influence as well. But even though I don't know when humans officially arrived in Asia, Southeast Asia, but it would have been pretty close to around 100,000 years ago. So it would have been pretty close. So I would actually say that a combination of things, like maybe humans have actually come in and then pretty much overtaken their territory, probably drove them away to extinction, and also probably the environment totally changed and pretty much it couldn't adapt to the new changes. All right, that's it for now. Now tomorrow I'll actually be doing the extra episode, and somebody recommended Tyrannosaur evolution, and that's one of my favorite topics to talk about, and so I'll give you all the knowledge, and I got all the resources right behind me to actually show you the details of Tyrannosaur evolution. But also, next week will actually be an answering questions episode, so if you got a question about dinosaurs or any other prehistoric life, feel free to email me at dinochris71@gmail.com, or go to my Facebook page, Prehistoric Facts with Dino Chris. Like the page, you can post your questions in the comments section on any Facebook post. Remember, keep your questions short and to the point. And also, you can follow me on Twitter at CSGRALL. That's my Twitter page. I post pretty cool stuff on there. And also, take care of the people around you. And also, for younger people out there, make sure to listen to your parents, your teachers, and your guardians. Those are the best motivation you can have for a good education. It's very important to have a good education, because with a good education, you get a good job in the future. All right, that's it for now, and I'll see you guys tomorrow.